Good morning, councillors. Good morning, executive. Good morning to those joining us in the digital gallery for the ordinary meeting of Tuesday, the 6th of September 2022. It's my privilege today to declare the meeting open, and in doing so I would once again acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet and across which the Scenic and Regional Council area is formed, and I pay respects to their elders past, present and future, and again can extend congratulations to them on their continued nurture of their culture. Councillors, I note that we have a full attendance of councillors, albeit that Councillor Chalk is dialing in remotely to join us today. And we have an apology from the GM Customer and Regional Prosperity, who is on council duties in attendance at another activity. However, the Manager Regional Development, Health and Biodiversity is sitting in, has her proxy for today's meeting. That gives a full attendance from the executive team, and at present there are no public attendees in the physical gallery for this morning. Therefore, turn our attention to prayers, and we were anticipating having someone to join us for prayers. However, that's not the case. So, councillors, I just share with you from Hebrews 13, verse 17, have confidence in your leaders and submit to their authority, because they keep watch over you as those who must give an account. Do this so that their work will be a joy, not a burden, for that would be of no benefit to you. Councillors, it's very mindful there that at any time in a leadership role, we are always called to give an account. And I think that's timely as we again head into the deliberations that we have before us today. Let's pause for a moment, please, in prayer. And Father, we do come before you as your servants, as servants to our communities, to serve the good of our whole community, which is never easy, which is challenging because we're balancing between needs and interests, priorities and capacity to serve. But nonetheless, we share that challenge together, and we sit at this table with an accountability to serve with diligence and truthfulness and openness and respect. We have an accountability here on earth, but we also have an accountability before you, Father. We ask today that you will cover this chamber with the sounds of wisdom, the openness of thinking, to listen to your voice of wisdom in all that we do. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, councillors. We now return to the item 5 on our agenda. Are there any declarations of prescribed or declarable conflicts of interest concerning the business before the meeting today? There are no declarations. Therefore, there are no announcements or mayoral minutes for today's meeting, and no, at item 7, no deputations or petitions. So we come to item 8, and we have before us a recommendation, councillors, that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the a bit hard to read. I think I can't quite read. The 16th of August. The screen's blurry for me this morning. 2022 be adopted. I seek a mover. Councillor Enright, any questions to those minutes? Sorry, Councillor McConnell.
No, it'll be business arising.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions to the minutes? If not, seek a seconder. Councillor McConnell, wish to speak. Councillor Enright. Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Councillor, we've moved to item 9 and we come to business arising from the previous minutes. Councillor McConnell, did you have something you wish to?
No. All good now, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Any other business arising?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Swanborough.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move a motion that permission be granted to correct and clarify the verbal record of my statement to the meeting of the ordinary meeting of the 19th of July 2022 concerning items 11.1 and 11.2.
Sorry, Councillor, we need a bit more detail as to what the nature of... so is that what you're asking for, Councillor? Is that your motion? So,
Yes, that's correct, Mr Mayor.
So, Councillor, just to be clear, that record forms part of the approved minutes of that meeting, is that correct?
Mr Mayor, it has been recorded in the minutes, but it's not proposed to be changed in any way.
Well, if you've got the suggestion to correct and clarify, you're also either saying that, so I'm just trying to get clarity, Councillor, if you're saying to correct, that to me interprets that the record in the minutes is incorrect.
No, it's not incorrect, Mr Mayor. The authorities have indicated to me that there's a misstatement in what I said at that particular meeting, and I'm here today to correct and apologise to the meeting for that particular statement, which was not 100% correct.
Councillor, I'm not again. I'll seek some guidance if I can from governance about what the right structure, before we understand what your content is. I understand what you're now trying to achieve, I think. However, I'm concerned that the wording implies an amendment to already closed minutes and it may need to be a different form of wording. Can governance provide any guidance, or GM?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr Mayor. So I guess there's no... from the way we interpret it, there's nothing contained currently in the standing orders. However, notwithstanding, the procedure motion would allow for such a statement. But on the basis of what Councillor Swanborough indicated then, that the way that that's currently proposed is, to clarify and record. So it's effectively allowing to make a statement, if anything, not making any adjustments or any other amendments. It's just purely a statement. If
Sorry, that's a very different statement. What your words were is different to what those words are.
That's what I'm saying. So what was proposed before is, we can't amend the records that are already set. However, the way that's currently worded to clarify the record of the statement.
That says to correct.
Yeah, that's right, to correct. So we can't correct the previously. What we're reading into is Councillor Swanborough just merely seeking to make a statement.
Yeah, and we could add into the words a verbal, correct the record of my verbal statement, if you want to do that.
Again, Councillor, I don't believe that's what you're trying to do from what you've said. You're trying to provide a statement correcting what you provided in the meeting. That's what you're trying to do?
Mr Mayor, it's been drawn to my attention by the authorities, unbeknownst to me, but it's been drawn to my attention. I feel I owe it as my responsibility to this meeting and to the public to correct a statement that I made that was not 100% accurate.
Councillor, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just asking that the form of the motion properly reflects what you're trying to do. And what I believe you're trying to... So the way you've currently worded it implies a correction to the record. The record is the record. And what I believe you're trying to seek through your motion, and I suggest as wording, is that you actually want the permission to provide a statement that corrects and clarifies.
Mr. Mayor, you just used the word correct, but I'm happy to take that word correct out.
Councillor,
if I take the correct
Councillor,
out.
please don't cut me off. I was trying to explain something, and again, you've cut me off. So the notion is you're wanting to provide a new statement today. That's the key point, which isn't there at the start of this. So all I'm suggesting is you're clarifying, you're wanting to make a new statement today. You're wanting to make a new statement today. That should be what you're asking for as your motion, that your permission be granted to provide a statement which serves the purpose of providing correction and clarification to what you provided in the course of that meeting. That's the intent you're trying to achieve? Well, that's not what that says. That's not what that says. It's very different to providing a statement of correction as opposed to correcting the record. So so the wording of that implies you're wanting to vary the minutes. That's what it implies to me,
Mr.
and
Mayor,
I'm uncomfortable with that.
if that's your concern, I'm not sure if it's everybody else's concern, but if it's your concern, that permission be granted to make a verbal statement to correct and clarify the record of my etc. And does that make it
Well,
clear for you?
It's not to correct the record, it's to correct and clarify my previous verbal statement to the ordinary meeting.
We can take out the record if that's your problem.
Well, it is, Councillor, because otherwise we're in a dangerous place of having approved minutes and then trying to later seek to vary something without having the full context of where it sits. Councillor, sorry, so is that without knowing the content of what you're proposing, Councillor, you're comfortable that that's a motion you wish to put as a procedure or as a motion?
That's right, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Enright, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a question to Councillor Swanborough. Without knowing the details of what's recorded in the minutes from 19th of July, just in front of us, were they verbal comments that you made on the 19th of July about the inappropriate conduct matters of 11.1 and 11.2? Were these recorded in the minutes, the words that you are wanting to correct or change or clarify?
I think we've already answered that question.
So, Councillor, so I believe the answer is, Councillor, yes, they form part of the record of the meeting, and by whatever means, that's why the clarity about this isn't now a correction to those minutes, it's a new statement.
So then, if I can ask a further question, if we've determined that the minutes are correct, they've been endorsed at the subsequent ordinary meeting, is the term to correct the appropriate word in this motion, or should it be just to clarify?
I believe from what Councillor Swanborough has already indicated, and I take that on face value, that he has fundamentally needs to correct something that he said to the meeting. So it's not just to add clarity to it. It's actually a specific statement that needs to be adjusted, is what I believe the council is indicating, without knowing the detail of it yet. And so, again, until we get further in, we need to deal with this matter first. So, Councillor, just some suggested advice that I've received from governance is permission be granted for me to would just make that read better. Okay. So
Further clarification? Oh, sorry.
yeah. Councillor McConnell first.
Just to confirm, that statement that you're providing clarity for is actually written record in the minutes of the meeting?
Correct. I think that's the same as the question, Councillor Enright.
Well, I've just brought up the minutes of the meeting, and if he could provide the page number and what it is, we'd be able to see if it's actually contained in there.
It's in relation to the conflict of interest discussions that we had, not about items 11.1 and 11.2.
Yeah, that's right. I just want to make sure it's actually written in the minutes if we're going to clarify. So do you know where it is?
Councillor
Do you know where it is?
Councillor McConnell,
Yep. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
we're not changing the minutes.
I agree, Mr. Mayor.
However, the councillor has has identified through whatever process of advice that he needs to correct what is part of the record of the meeting, which is the audio as well as the written. So this statement now clarifies that this is about adjusting that statement.
And it was a verbatim statement of my words that were put into the minutes, I understand.
So, Councillor Enright, yes, further
Just
clarification.
thinking about how this will capture this change, given that we're not going to change the minutes, but is there, in thinking about in 5 years' time when someone wants to call up that particular discussion, how is it that it's going to be linked?
So, Councillor, that is not a matter we need to consider in the meeting today. That is not a relevant matter for the consideration of this today. It is a matter that will require some administrative thought for the future. However, the councillor has to correct something that was communicated to the meeting. And at some point that may have relevance to a future consideration which will need to be dealt with. But it can't change what was the considerations of that day. So that day is considered on the basis of the information that was in the minutes. This is a separate point of activation. So I'm comfortable that we shouldn't be dealing with that piece of a consideration today. We've had some discussion around the clarity of the motion and around the intent. Councillor Swanborough, I don't know whether there's any further need to speak to your motion, procedural motion. No. I think that was a no.
No, there's no need to clarify anything more.
Sorry, So, as a procedural motion then, we don't require a seconder. And therefore, I then put the motion, unless someone's wishing to speak additionally to it. Put the motion. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors, for providing that discretion. Councillor, you like to put tell us your statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, it's important that when we do make statements in a council meeting that we get it right, and I'll be the first to put my hand up and own up if I've said something that is wrong, and that's why I'm making this particular statement today. It has been drawn to my attention only in the last week that there was a misstatement which has been made, and so I wish to correct that statement, and it's in two parts. The first correction is that I said the complaints relating to 11.1 and 11.2 when we were discussing the conflict of interest provisions relating to whether, Mr Mayor, you had a conflict of interest, that I was wrong. I was advised on the 24th of November 2020, which was 22 months ago, that you were the complainant and not the CEO's office, as I said in my statement. And I apologise to the meeting for this error, and ask that it note that clarification. The second correction is in declaring that you may have a bias against me and a declarable conflict of interest over items 11.1 and 11.2. I also said it's well known that you have lodged a lot of other complaints to the CEO against me, all of which have been dismissed. That is not 100% accurate. What I meant to express was that none of the other complaints to date have been upheld, and all are being vigorously defended. I apologise for this inaccuracy of my expression. The matter occurred in a council meeting and could and should have been dealt with when these inaccuracies were brought to my attention at the time. That is concluding my statement, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'd like to move now that my statement be received.
I'm sorry, Councillor. And this is the problem with your statement, Councillor, because it actually contains new false information from what I read in it, and now we don't have the capacity to consider it today, because without fully refreshing my mind about 11.1, 11.2, which wasn't part of the preparation for today's meeting, if it's the two matters I'm thinking of, I did not raise those matters and I had no involvement with those matters. So whoever has informed you incorrectly, and you've now created another dangerous place for me, because if it's the matters I'm thinking of, there was one matter on the day that I raised, and the others weren't matters that I raised from my recollection and understanding. So again, I can't stop you putting your statement there. I'm just flagging to you that I believe there are other pieces of fact that you may not have properly considered in what you're putting forward, but that be as it is. Councillor Chalk, we have a motion that's not yet seconded, so from Councillor Swanborough. So do you wish to have, Councillor McInnes, did you have a question?
Yes, if I could clarify from Councillor Swanborough, you actually said you were given the information last week, but you just see your last few words that you said there was that you had information at the time that you should have used. Don't correct me. Your last sentence that you used there sort of indicated that you knew then, but you didn't, didn't relay it. I read into that, but could you just clarify the last sentence that you had in relation to when this information came to you?
Yeah, look, I was unaware that the words which were recorded in the minutes, which I accept were verbatim words, were noted from the minutes clerk, were the words that I spoke. There was no question about that. But as time went by, I received notification that someone disputed that the accuracy of those words. And when I went back and had a look at those words, I had to agree that they weren't 100% accurate. The issue here was whether all the complaints that had been made against me by the Mayor were dismissed. Well, they obviously haven't been dismissed. There's still, I understand also from the same source, that there's still 8 of them which haven't been dealt with, and they'll be dealt with sooner or later, and there's also others that haven't been dealt with that will be dealt with sooner or later. So when I made that statement in a meeting, not having the benefit of being able to research 68 complaints that I've had against me and who said what and when and where, I made that statement in error. And since it was drawn to my attention, I went back to see if what was being said was correct, and I believe the error that was pointed out to me was correct. And so that's why I've decided that I needed to clarify what my intention was in that statement, and also to apologise to meeting because it wasn't 100% accurate, and I needed to do that in a timely manner because that's the proper and professional thing to do.
I suppose I'm reading it here in front of us now, and the last few words have been dealt with when these inaccuracies were brought to my attention at the time. At the time is the bit I'm questioning. If it was at that time.
No, that was when I got notification at the time.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to clarify it.
So, can I just go up the statement, please? So there.
That's not word for word, that's the copy I was given. That's
Yeah. So I'm just. So, Councillor, the one thing that I note in here, whilst you've verbalised to the room an apology, you haven't included in your motion an apology.
Could I just see the...
Sorry, yes, in the second line. I couldn't see it before because we're just moving around. Thank you. We'll deal with the veracity or otherwise at another occasion when these matters need to be dealt with. That's the statement the council is wishing to put on the table. Councillor McConnell, did you wish to ask a question?
Yeah, we've already moved a motion, procedural motion to
allow
grant
him to
him
make...
permission. Doesn't that?
No. So that was allowing to make the statement.
Now we're receiving.
Now we want to receive
Okay.
the motion as a matter of the record of the meeting.
Okay.
So thank you for that clarification, Councillor. So this is no longer a procedural motion. This is now a matter of business, so it needs a seconder.
So just a quick
Sorry,
one.
further
Noting that it wasn't read verbatim off the statement and what is on the screen isn't probably 100% correct.
Sorry, so Councillor Swanborough,
Yeah.
is that the statement you're wanting taken?
that's the statement I read out, Mr Mayor, and that's
No,
the one I provided to the minute clerk.
No, that's you ad-libbed a little bit in there and she couldn't keep up with what you were saying is all I'm saying. It's not verbatim.
The minutes...
Look, I had to make a pre-statement to this, and then I had to make a post-statement to it. But this is the essence of what my statement should be.
So you're satisfied this, not with what you verbally said?
Look, it's not. It's only the middle part of what I said because I gave a preamble and I gave a paragraph at the end after this, basically in light of questions that had been asked of me. But this is the statement that I wanted to make.
Okay, thank you.
It's ultimately your statement, Councillor. We'll deal with what that turns out in the future as well. So if you're comfortable with that, as what you're proposing to move, I seek a seconder. Thank you, Councillor McConnell. Any wish to speak further, Councillor Swanborough?
No, it's self-explanatory, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against the motion? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? We put the motion. Those in favour? Councillor Chalk?
In favour.
It's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We now move on to item 10 of our, item 11, today's meeting. Oh, sorry, item 10, I apologise, councillors. Pen marks on my page. We move to item 10.1, and we ask the acting CEO to introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning to councillors, my fellow executive officers and those of you listening in the digital gallery. Item 10.1 is a request from councillors McConnell and Swanborough to attend a dropping anchor course on Sunday the 16th of October in Cairns, which happens prior to the Local Government Association of Queensland conference, which is commences on the following Monday. Total cost for the councillors' attendance at that meeting, at that workshop, is approximately, to our best estimate, with including accommodation and incidental expenses, $530 for the cost of the course for each person, as well as $379 for accommodation and incidental expenses.
Thank you for the introduction. Any questions to the report, councillors? Councillor McConnell?
Just one in regards to accommodation incidental expenses. The $379 is for both councillors?
$379 is for each councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor West?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, just for clarification from the CEO, I understand when the agenda or the program came out for this conference, this was not the original workshop that was scheduled for that Sunday. Is that right? It was more of a media.
Yes, Councillor West, that is correct. Peak Services originally had scheduled a session, professional development session that was, I believe, intelligence and communication. And at the 11th hour, that session was cancelled, and Peak Services stepped in to put this course up as a replacement course for that day.
Thank you. Councillor Enright, further question?
Thank you, Mayor. I note that this course is available online. My question is, have the councillors considered the delivery of this option online, as the information provided is that it ranges from a cost of $200 and can be arranged at any time. So I wonder whether, given the consideration of the cost associated, whether that might be a consideration.
Is that a question to the councillors? Yes. Councillor McConnell?
Yes, I did have a look at that, but I looked closely into the course and some of the feedback, and face-to-face when you're talking about emotional wellness is better than on the screen. You don't get the same clarity, and when you're in a group room talking about this, it actually provides better context. So it is a hands-on interactive workshop. So it's not one of those Zoom, as we've had over the last 2 years, where you sort of get lost in the context of in the context of the course due to looking at a screen and not being able to respond. So we did have a look at that. Obviously, the first course would have been good to go on, but this one, again, it's about thoughts and feelings, and I'll just read out. It will teach the illusion of control over our thoughts and feelings and how they are culturally reinforced. What are emotional storms and how we typically respond? How to notice and name the intense thoughts and feelings which get us hooked. How to better respond to intense feelings of anger, anxiety and worries. mindfulness strategies to reduce the impact and influence of emotional storms. So given how we've operated the last 2 years, I think this one would be greatly received.
Any further response? If not, any other questions? My only question is, I note, for clarification, I just note, what does this, I'd ask CEO or the GM, what this means in terms of the budget allocation for all councillors' training. I note that Councillor McConnell's, this would take his expenses for the year quite significantly. How does that play out for prudent expenditure, and what's the implications for other councillors?
Thanks for the question, Mayor. Just to provide some context to your question, the report includes an indication that each councillor is provided with a budget of $1,000 annually to attend professional development. This provision in the council is an allowance in the 2022-2023 operational budget for councillors' participation, and this proposal would, the cost of this additional training would take Councillor McConnell's expenses to $2,169, and to date, Councillor Swanborough has not attended any professional development courses in this financial year that required specific approval or budget allocation. This additional training would take Councillor Swanborough's expenses to $909. So that's the context of the Mayor's question. I will pass the baton to the General Manager, Council Sustainability, to respond from a budget perspective.
Thanks, Caroline. From a budget perspective, Mr Mayor, councillors, I guess not knowing what other future training opportunities that would like to be attended to, it may at some point in time require some sort of budget amendment, or given that there's whilst there is a specific allocation for each council, if some councils aren't attending anything for the year, then on the basis that there is an overarching allocation, then there may not be an amendment required. But that's not. It'll be at some point in time when the training becomes, we become aware of any training requests that we may have to consider what the implications are.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other?
If I could just provide some clarity, Mr Mayor, the courses that I have been attending, the recent ones I did was the protocols and for council meetings, chairing council meetings. I've got another one with de-escalating aggressive behaviour, are all linked to my additional role as Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Sorry, we'll get to that. So we have a recommendation that sits there, which may not serve us. It's left to the decision of the meeting. So, CEO, I'll just get you to introduce your recommendation, which may not be adequate for what we need, but let's start.
Thanks, Mayor. The recommendation as it stands is that Council consider the requests from Councillor Jeffrey McConnell and Councillor Derek Swanborough to attend the Peak Services 2-hour emotional wellness workshop Dropping Anchor on Sunday the 16th of October 2022 in Cairns at a cost per person of a course cost of $530 and accommodation and incidental expenses of $379 per person.
Councillors, that's the recommendation before us. I'd suggest we may want to consider that, but perhaps structure our own motion to provide clarity of how to proceed on this matter. So before seeking a mover to the acting CEO's recommendation, I'm going to see if there's a motion from the floor, which may well use much of that wording.
Mayor, can I move an alternate motion,
Councillor Enright?
please? That council make inquiries into the delivery of online emotional wellness workshop, dropping anchor. For the delivery of, for the opportunity of all councillors to participate at a time that is convenient.
Is that at the time or at a time?
At a time that is convenient.
That's a proposed motion proposed by Councillor Enright. Questions to the motion, councillors? Councillor McConnell?
It would have been nice if I would have happily agreed to this and not gone on that course if other councillors had said they wanted to do the course. So, and I don't think it should be an online delivery. If all the councillors want to come out, want to do this course, then I think we should get the facilitator out here and do a face-to-face delivery of the workshop. I've got no problem with that. If all the councillors want to do it, I'm happy for us all to do it. But there was no indication from anyone that they wanted to do this course. So I'd rather see an online delivery, not an online, sorry, a face-to-face delivery instead of online. And happy to support the alternate motion.
Further questions or questions to the motion? Councillor Swan?
Just a question in relation to this, because this is sort of a personal course and we'll be interacting with a lot of people that, you know, we don't have a lot of interaction with. Is it going to be satisfactory, you know, that this group of people want to share their inner thoughts and feelings in a workshop to you know, people that we work with day by day? I'm not sure that that would be a satisfactory way of going about a wellness course. I think a certain degree of separation between our colleagues and in a course like this is probably preferable for emotional well-being reasons.
So, sorry, that's more of a comment than a question, but Councillor...
Sorry, if I can do another one. What's Councillor Enright's thoughts on what Councillor Swanborough just said as a question?
Thanks, Councillor McConnell. I might answer or respond to both of you. I value the content of a report of a training program that addresses anything that assists people with workplace worry, stress, and anxiety. I think that's very important. The reason that I didn't show any interest in this one was it doesn't suit me to go to Cairns on the Sunday before the conference, and I only became aware of this when it was included in the agenda, that the other courses that you had intended to go to were cancelled. So I think the opportunity, I would encourage staff and councillors to consider this report, this training, because I think it's got value. To Councillor Swanborough's point about our sharing our innermost thoughts and feelings amongst our colleagues, maybe that provides a benefit of doing the online training where you can be participating with other people around the state rather than with individual councillors. And to Councillor McConnell's suggestion that the trainer comes to here, also presents some issues about what you were concerned about, of sharing your innermost feelings with your colleagues. So I think there's benefit in the online training, and it can be done at any time. The 7 of us could do it at 7 different times potentially.
So doing it online with a whole lot of other people across the whole state at the same time is not going to impede people from talking to each other?
Well, I think it comes back to the question of what is the content of the report, of the training program that's outlined in the report. And I would imagine that this experienced trainer would know how to provide the right environment for that, and I think it's probably more about providing tools to assist us in our journey. So I think delivering it online would provide the opportunity for those tools, and that can be done at any time.
So, sorry, Councillor West's been waiting to, seeing as everyone's adding comments as much as questions.
If mine's a comment.
Yes.
Look, and I think this looks a really great course. I guess my concern is that it comes at an extra cost, which is the accommodation and incidental expenses. And I guess we have to be mindful of that. Is there another way that this can be delivered to us, bearing in mind that this is ratepayers' money that we are spending to attend this? I'm certainly not against the course at all. But if there's an alternative, I'd be happy to look at that.
So, Councillor Swanborough, you wish to?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Look, what Councillor West is saying can be turned around the other way. The cost in our time and the cost of airfares, attending a conference, this just adds to the value, and in association with the fixed costs that are already being incurred in getting up to Cairns and staying there and coming back again. I think this is a superior use of our time to do this training while it's being offered, at the same location as where we're going for the conference.
So, actually, that's talking to a slightly different thing to what the motion is that's sitting there, but that's okay. So, Councillor McConnell.
If I could just ask the CEO for some of her expertise within human resources in regards to this course and whether online versus face-to-face, which she would find more beneficial to the participants.
Thanks for the question, Councillor. I'd obviously be speculating in that I haven't attended the course myself. I think, face-to-face, we'd all agree, is a great delivery mechanism for training, and traditionally how training is delivered and well received. That said, I think over the last 2 to 3 years, we have all experienced online interaction more so than we ever have before. The people who do this professionally, I think, have become far more adept at being efficient and effective. I know the use of some platforms such as Microsoft Teams allows for people to break into different spaces to interact online in different spaces. So, it really is about how the trainer uses the tools that they have to deliver the courses. I don't think it can be disputed that face-to-face training is a better experience for people. That said, when I looked at the course content, I'd certainly agree with Councillor Enright that it is more about teaching and educating people on the use of tools and strategies rather than a counselling as such. So I don't know that people would be airing all of their own personal issues. I think it's more about providing you with the tools. That's probably the best I can answer, Councillor.
Thank you. Any further questions? We have a proposed motion before us.
If I can just ask Councillor Enright if he would take a suggestion into the delivery of online or face-to-face.
delivery of face-to-face, you'd have to mean delivery here you're talking about?
No, within the southeast.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I think within anywhere that's within a
Drive.
100 drive or 100 kilometre radius or something. Yes.
Thank you.
So without that as a formal amendment, councillor Enright, are you indicating you would adapt your wording
Yeah, happy to.
to
adapt
include
list,
council make inquiries into the delivery of online or face-to-face
face.
emotional needs?
I'd just like to just put a bit more around
Yes.
the details of face-to-face delivery.
Perhaps after the dropping anchor, councillor, within
Within South East Queensland?
within South East Queensland. I think that just captures the other piece that you were clarifying.
Could I ask
Sorry,
a question
Councillor
of Councillor Enright? Is your extra motion to provide opportunity for the councillors who can't attend the conference to do this training? Is that what you're trying to say, or are you trying to say that you don't want to vote for Councillor McConnell and I to do this online training because you're proposing an alternative and we therefore should attend that alternative rather than doing the online one in Cairns? Is that what you're supposing? Because the words don't don't read that in the resolution.
Point of order, councillor. Just for clarity, you weren't proposing to do an online course in Cairns. You were proposing to do a face-to-face course in Cairns. So you've just talked about doing an online course in Cairns. I think you misspoke again. Just to clarify, that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's right. Councillor Enright's proposing that we do a face-to-face one at an alternative time, but is it for the other councillors who don't do it in Cairns, or is it your intention to make all the councillors do it at the same time?
So the intention of looking at an alternative, I think, probably addresses two issues. One is the increase in cost to participate in Cairns, which I think we have to be conscious of, the costs of the use of ratepayer funds. Secondly was to provide an alternative that might encourage the other councillors to participate, because I see value in the course. And at another location or another delivery means, it wasn't till I started inquiring into the options that I see that there was this option for online and or Councillor McConnell's suggestion of a face-to-face arrangement here in South East Queensland.
Could I ask the question, well, have you surveyed the other councillors to find out if they would be prepared to go and spend their professional development money on such a course if it was operated within 100 kilometres of here?
No, I haven't surveyed the other councillors, but I have spoken to Peak Services, who said that an online delivery would be possible for 4 or more people.
So Councillor Swanborough,
I'm confused with Councillor Enright's motives or his what he's trying to achieve here. Are you talking about councillors doing an online course or doing a face-to-face with this trainer at another time?
Sorry, for clarity, councillor, the motion talks quite clearly to either of those options that becomes most effective for the team. And just to address the potential survey, the visibility that we had in the planning for this program was around this being media related, and that clearly didn't get a lot of traction, and this dropped in and certainly didn't appear as an option, and I certainly don't have the capacity to adjust what I have as other commitments on the Sunday to be able to make it at that time. So I wasn't about to start making late changes and additional costs to try to do so for a course that didn't didn't sit at that place in a value proposition. The opportunity for this as an ongoing piece of development for all councillors is a decision for each councillor. The opportunity to participate, to me, is something that's of interest if that time can be found as part of an ongoing development. But Councillor McInnes.
Yes, I'd like to ask councillors McConnell and Swanborough if they've, number one, booked their flights and has accommodation been booked already, and can they reverse whatever has happened? Yeah, I'd imagine they've booked it.
Yeah, it's all booked, but that'd be up to the CEO whether they can be changed without cost. I'll just say I actually like face-to-face, so I learn better face-to-face, and when you've got other people there that you don't know, it actually brings out the core. So the only additional expense between Councillor Enright's and the other recommendation is $379 per for each councillor. So that's the only other expense. So the $530 is still going to be spent with Councillor Enright's motion. So it's only an additional cost of $379, and you get to network and talk with other councillors around the state. But I'm happy if they don't see the benefit of that to do it face-to-face down in the southeast.
And that's working on the assumption doesn't cost anything to change your flights, etc. That's already booked, which will come off that price, basically.
So, councillors, we have a motion, Councillor Enright, we have a motion that we're supposed to be just considering at the moment.
Mayor, can I just clarify a point that Councillor McConnell just made? The cost of the online delivery, as listed in the report, is $200 as opposed to $530. So there is a significant difference in the cost of face-to-face versus online, and there's more convenience in delivery.
Can I reply?
Sorry.
Just to say, I already clarified that I learn better face-to-face. You get better interaction, and so I'll be taking up the face-to-face option within your motion.
So, Councillor West, did you want to add to this before we...
I was just going to say, it's not just after Councillor McConnell's comments. It's not that we don't think it'll be useful or any of those sort of things. But I suppose for me, I am conscious, and I applaud what you were doing and doing lots of courses and things. But your expenses are getting up a bit, and we have to be mindful of the council that we are. We don't have a huge budget for educating and going to courses and things. So that's really probably my concern, to be honest, on behalf of our ratepayers.
Okay, so...
Just a question, Mr Mayor, in relation to Councillor West's statement. I wonder if the director of the General Manager of Sustainability could tell us if there are any unders and overs in this particular budget vote. I know, as far as professional development goes, that 2020 and 2021, I didn't spend a cent in relation to this particular vote. Has those figures been carried over, which could fund Councillor McConnell's additional expenditure this year?
Generally, and I'll probably answer them previously, if there are any future training that's required, there had to be a consideration of council. Generally, for those operational matters, that's not carried forward into the previous years.
So for future years. So for clarity, it is a zero base each year, and unless there is a pre-commitment for a course, there wouldn't be a carry forward of prior year funding, I think, as an operational expense. Okay, so we have a motion from Councillor Enright. I think we've had a fair bit of discussion to clarify thoughts around it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor West, thank you. Any further questions? We've had a fair bit of discussion. Is there any other discussion? If not, Councillor Enright, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I value the content of this course. I think we need to be conscious of our mental health, both ourselves, but also we need to be supportive of that and understanding of that in the wider community. I see great value in this course. I just don't see the value of having this delivered at Cairns with the additional accommodation costs that go with it. But I do see value in looking at alternatives, be it online or face-to-face in South East Queensland, so that gives an opportunity for more councillors to participate as they wish.
And wishing to speak
Mr.
against? Sorry, Councillor Swanborough.
Mr Mayor, can I propose an amendment at this particular point in time?
Sorry, Councillor, I thought we'd gone through a lot of that, but fire away. Let's see what your proposed amendment is.
I think it's good that opportunity be given to all other councillors, but the motion doesn't say anything about what happens to the first motion recommending approval to attend versus the one that's saying that we just
Sorry,
need to
Councillor.
make inquiry. So I'd like to amend.
Point of order, Councillor. There is no motion recommending anything to attend at the moment. So there is just a recommendation that hasn't been endorsed that was put forward by the CEO, which required council to respond. I believe the matter you're raising might well be a separate item to deal with that, depending on the deliberations on this motion. And therefore, I would, if your amendment was going to try to address matters pertaining to two individuals, I'd suggest you might perhaps wait and have that as a further motion, depending on the outcome of this.
Look, I could probably deal with it by saying with the amendment that we amend that recommendation to mean that for the opportunity of other councillors not attending the Cairns training to participate at a time that is convenient.
Point of order, Mayor, if I may.
Sorry, so the council is proposing an amendment, which is, I believe, now the amendment would appear to be contrary to the intent of the original motion, in that part of the discussion of the original motion was about the delivery of that down here for all councillors, and that variation would not uphold that it's in conflict with that intent, and therefore it's an amendment that I believe doesn't satisfy that test.
Mr Mayor, just in clarifying that, I believe the motion put forward, the intent of the motion put forward was for all councillors to be able to attend the conference. But if the motion is to stop Councillor McConnell and I from doing this training, then yes, it is contrary to it. But there are two motives in there. One is to allow everybody to attend the conference. The other one is to stop two councillors who requested attendance from attending. So which one is it that is Councillor Enright suggesting needs to occur here?
Sorry, Councillor, I've got the challenge from the chair of considering the meaning, the relevance of the amendment, and the wording that was discussed, and Councillor McConnell, I think, participated in that discussion, that the notion of participating, whether online, face-to-face, in the southeast and doing that's for all councillors, was the intent of the motion. The wording that you've proposed as an amendment doesn't support the intent of that, because it was about that ability for all to access it at the most affordable way.
I'd just like to foreshadow another motion after the end, please, Mr Mayor.
So I don't believe the amendment can coexist with the motion, Councillor, in the way that you've proposed it. So I'm saying that the amendment doesn't pass that test, but I'm explaining the reason why, because of the language that you've proposed. The language of the motion was quite clear about the intent for all councillors to participate in the southeast.
Mr Mayor, I'd be interested in the views of other councillors in relation to that interpretation.
Well, councillor, I'm giving you, unfortunately it sits on the chair to make that guidance to the meeting. I'm happy if there's a different view from governance, but I'm happy to hear from Councillor McInnes.
Mayor, I think that, and I appreciate as chair, you have to make a ruling on it, but I think it's Councillor Enright, what was his motive behind, was he that wanted all councillors here, or was it, what was the reason behind the motion, really? It could be interpreted two ways, the motion that's put there.
I'll allow Councillor Enright if you wish to add.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought I'd clarified that previously in what I've said. It's really twofold. It's about providing the opportunity. As I said earlier, I see value in the course. I don't see value in the cost of nearly $1,000.
Correction, $379 per person, not 1,000.
So the cost to go to Cairns is almost 1,000 to do this course. So, course.
Sorry, councillor. Perhaps to clarify, it's the difference in cost.
Difference in cost.
You were talking
yes,
about,
I see
which isn't $1,000.
Yep. Okay.
For each individual. I think is the councillor's point.
So I think what raised me to look at alternatives was that cost. And when I saw that the online delivery was available for $200 a person, well, I see that provided an opportunity for many more councillors to provide that. So it's actually both.
If I can just ask the CEO, the difference in cost between the Sunday flight for myself and Councillor Swanborough and the Monday flight for the remainder of the councillors, was there a difference there?
I can answer in general terms, Councillor, that the cost of the flights, I believe, between Sunday and Monday was the cost of flights were reasonably similar when we were looking at them originally. There is a cost to change the flights of approximately $99 plus $30 tax. So about $129 cost to change the flights. There is no additional cost to change the accommodation because it hasn't yet been booked.
Can I ask what the difference in flight costs were for the Monday to Sunday? Because that did factor in our deliberations to go on that first one as well, because the flights were cheaper on the Sunday.
Okay, I've received advice that the flights were similar cost.
Similar?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think we're down a rabbit hole. We're here talking about a particular piece of wording that does sit in conflict with that intent, and I would therefore say that this amendment doesn't pass that test to move forward as an amendment to the motion. So if there is a further amendment that councillors would like to propose, I'm happy to hear it. Otherwise, we'll continue on to seek someone to speak against the motion.
Mr Mayor, can I move a motion of disagreement with your decision?
Of course you can, councillor.
Mr Mayor, there is confusion here about whether this is contrary to the contrary amendment to Councillor Enright's motion here. I haven't been convinced, and you've made the ruling. I haven't heard from all the councillors yet as to whether they agree with that ruling, so I move a motion of disagreement with your decision and ask the councillors to vote on it.
Well, Sorry, Councillor McConnell?
If we were to take just the Councillor Enright's motion, then it doesn't provide enough because we still need the approval of the expense of the 530 and the 379 and the attendance. So we'd need to, neither one of those motions, your motion doesn't give us the clarity of the approval of the 530 and the 379 to attend the course. So I don't think it's in contradiction, but I don't think it goes enough to clarify what would be needed to approve our attendance on that course.
Sorry, Councillor. For clarity, the reason for, I think it's important this will have to be there. The reason I have concluded that the proposed amendment is inconsistent is that the wording of the motion, which was the subject of 35 minutes of debate, discussion, was to provide the most cost-effective opportunity for all councillors to participate here in the southeast in this training at a time that is convenient. Whether that's online or face-to-face is not material. Those options were both included in the motion, but the intent was that it be made available to all councillors, not just other councillors. So that's quite a change of scope, and certainly the amendment then referred to an implication for other councillors not attending the training in Cairns, which is a fundamental change of what the motion was trying to achieve. It's a substantial step away from what the motion was trying to achieve. Okay, so
So, just a clarification, Mr Mayor, what you've said there, so you're concerned about the cost, is that it? But
no, Councillor, again, which part of the motion said all councillors South East Queensland? That's what the motion said, all councillors the training South East Queensland. Your motion says some councillors South East Queensland, which is a very significant change of scope and intent from what the motion said and is inconsistent with the motion. Sorry, Councillor Enright.
Mayor, can I just raise the standing orders amendment to a motion 15.1 in our policy or procedure? An amendment to a motion shall be in terms which maintain or further clarify the intent of the original motion and does not contradict the motion.
I don't think it contradicts it.
I believe it does.
So councillors, that's basically, I can't explain it any further, that one says all councillors and the amendment would change that to anyone who doesn't go to it travel to North Queensland to do it could do it here. So that's quite a difference, quite a variation, because that opportunity is already available.
You've just said it. It's a variation. It's not a contradiction.
That's quite a variation, Councillor, and it's a change of the scope. It's a significant change of the scope.
Oh yes, so, I agree. It's a change of the scope.
So, I note, councillors, that you're very strongly putting a position. So, Councillor McGuinness.
Councillor McGuinness, can I get you?
Councillor McGuinness, to switch on again.
The proposed motion, I believe, doesn't. It's a bit ambiguous. It's I think if some words at the end of it. If Councillor Enright had words like the request for training be denied, I think it just clarifies it. I don't agree with his motion, but I think it's ambiguous the way it is. I can understand where the Mayor's coming from in making the ruling that he has, but it is open to discussion whether it is contradiction or otherwise of the motion.
And look, further, councillors, as I've said, I'm happy to entertain further amendment if that's required. That doesn't conflict with that. I've reiterate that. However, I've made that. Councillor Swanborough has put a procedural motion. So you wish to speak further to your procedural motion, councillor?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Look, the procedural motion ticks all the boxes for, the end game here is that councillors get trained in something that's important to them. Also, councillors should be given the opportunity to nominate which courses they think they should go to for professional development, and I think it's creates a pretty nasty precedent if a councillor believes that he needs training in one particular area, and that someone tries to contradict him and say, no, we want to do it a different way, or we want to do it at another time. And then the additional cost of going up there, when you take into account the $260 cancellation of airfare fees, needs to be considered in all of this. And I think the amendment that I've put forward, caters for everybody participating, everybody choosing which sort of course they want to do, and the fact that the training can be delivered to anybody who wants it. So I support the amendment I've put forward, but I also with the notice of
You're just speaking to your procedural motion.
With my procedural motion, I think it carries it. By disagreeing with the procedural motion, council will get to consider the amendment.
Anyone wishing to speak against the procedural motion? Councillor Enright?
Mayor, I would like to speak against the amendment.
The
procedural motion, righto, because it tries to change the intent of the original motion, and we're really using any opportunity in the book to try and do that rather than following what is in our standing orders.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in support of the procedural motion? Anyone else?
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor McConnell.
Yeah, I will speak in support. I don't think it contradicts, as you said, Mr Mayor. It isn't quite as cut and dried as that. I do believe that we should have more debate on the proposed amendment, and it may need some more clarification.
Anyone else wishing to speak against the procedural motion? Sorry, Councillor McInnes.
Yes, I will speak against the motion. I believe it is in contradiction, as much as I don't agree with the motion that was put forward by Councillor Enright. I believe there's, because of the ambiguous nature of the motion, unfortunately, I don't think it is clarified, but there's enough doubt in my mind that it is in contradiction to that motion.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for procedural motion? Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? Councillor Swanborough, anything you wish to close?
No, Mr Mayor.
Okay. We put the vote on the procedural motion, dissenting with the Mayor's decision in this matter. Those in favour of the procedural motion? Those against? Against. Okay, the procedural motion's defeated.
Division, please, Mr Mayor.
Division called. Those in favour of the procedural motion were divisions 1 and 2. Against divisions 3, 4, 5, 6 and Mayor. So that being said, we return now to the motion of Councillor Enright that we were in the process of. The councillor had opened discussion towards, and I will remain open to the floor if there is a further amendment that counts to this motion, that's relevant to this motion, before we still have to return to the consideration of the original material in this. Councillor McConnell?
Yeah, if I could just ask Councillor Enright a question, considering the statement by the CEO that it's around about $240 to change the flights. And if you could just move up a bit, please. So around about $280 would be the savings. Considering that I still intend to do a face-to-face course down here, and I think Councillor Swanborough does as well. Does Councillor Enright consider the $280 to be grossly excessive for the training of...
Councillor, I'm just going to pull you up there. We're in the process of speaking for or against the motion.
I thought you said questions.
No. I had clarified. Councillor Enright, what I said was there any further amendment proposed? But we'd moved past questions. Councillor Enright had spoken for his motion. So the motion was moved and seconded, just to bring you up to speed. Council was moved and seconded. The council had spoken for it, and when I was seeking anyone to speak against it was when Councillor Swanborough then proposed the amendment. So we've gone down that trail. We're now back with the original motion. So I'm either seeking a speaker against the motion or if there is an additional amendment proposed.
If I can seek the Chair's grace to ask a question of Councillor Enright?
So long as it's not...
Just so I could get more clarity.
Well, as long as we're not going into the costs of something else, Council, I'm not sure that's relevant to the motion. That's all.
Well, it is to the cost because it's $280. Does Councillor Enright consider the $280 to be grossly excessive for councillors to attend training?
Thank you for the question, Councillor McConnell. My figures are $580, 379 of the costs for accommodation and other incidentals, less the cost to change the airfares of $129. That is $250. You add to that the difference between the $530 for the face-to-face course or the $200 online course. That's $330. On top of the $250 is $580 per councillor. So that's $1,160. My answer is yes, I think that's a consideration.
So just to clarify, are you saying that we all now have to... Your stance is that unless we attend the online training for $200, then councillors attending the face-to-face are grossly, I won't say ripping off, but using ratepayers' money to attend training. Is that what you're saying?
So, Councillor, I think we've now moved away from a reasonable question. The motion is there. Do you wish to speak against the motion or not? Councillor Swanborough, do you wish to speak against the motion?
Yeah, I speak against it because I don't believe those figures that Councillor Enright has put forward are comparing apples with apples. As you said yourself, Mr Mayor, it's a differential cost which needs to be considered in this thing, and Councillor Enright has put the fixed costs that we all have to bear to attend that conference into his exercise, and that's just not right. And so I speak against the motion because I think it's deficient at the moment in addressing. This is about This is about a request from two councillors to attend training, and I don't believe that that the motion clarifies, what we're going to do as a result of this motion.
So, anyone else wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor West.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support this motion, and I guess I just reiterate, whatever the cost is, we need to be ever mindful of what the costs are when we're doing these courses, and we don't want to have extra cost on top of, which is what this originally was going to be, was accommodation overnight.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak against the motion? Councillor McConnell.
Yeah, I will speak against the motion, Mr Mayor. I don't think when you have a look at the cost to cancel the flight of $120, and we're only looking at the $379, if you take off the $125, I think it is, takes $129, takes it down to about $250. I think the difference in flights was around about $80 to $90, which takes it down to about $160. I think given the attendance with other councillors across the state at these courses, the networking that you do, I don't think it's an excessive amount. And I think the benefit definitely outweighs the additional cost of $160. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in support of the motion? I will speak in support of the motion. This motion doesn't talk at all about cost, and it seems that that's something that's the specific costs, I should say, for particular councillors if something else were to continue. This motion simply talks to now that there's visibility of this course being available, that the most efficient way for that to be delivered is to find a time here in South East Queensland. Given that the service provider is based in South East Queensland, there's an opportunity for a more cost-effective solution that's beneficial for all councillors out of those dollars, which allows for all councillors to participate at a time that is convenient. That's what this motion talks to as a sensible solution that is sensible to the cost eye of our ratepayers in regard to this investment. I support the motion. Anyone else wishing to speak against?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Chalk.
Yeah, look, I don't think we should get involved in dictating when councillors wish to attend training. These councillors have identified that they wish to do it at this time. It's a sensitive topic, emotional wellness, and I feel as though if they feel this is the best way to get the best out of this course for them, that's what they should be supported in to do. Yes, there comes at a cost. I'll be more than happy to forgo my training for this year to make sure that happens at their convenience. So I don't think this motion really is in line with the request, so I'm not going to support it.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in support of the motion? Anyone else seeking to speak additionally? Councillor McGuinness.
Yeah, as I indicated earlier, I have concerns with this motion of Councillor Enright's. I just don't think the cost is a very small cost there. I agree with the comments made about this is what they've done. They've actually gone and booked for it, in which I can't blame them for doing that. And so there's not a big cost to council at the end of the day. And if we want to, the rest of the council, if we happen to do it, that can be organised, and I think it's a good opportunity to meet with other councillors from around the state and share their views on the issues that they're facing too. It does more good than some of the courses sometimes on these things, what you find out from people and how it's affecting them.
Councillor Enright, you wish to close?
No, thanks, Mayor.
We put the motion. Those in favour? Those against?
Against.
The motion's defeated. Division called. Those in favour, Mayor, Divisions 3 and 4. Against Divisions 1, 2, 5 and 6. We return to the consideration then of a motion in the context of what's before us today. As I said earlier, the recommendation was left it open for the meeting to determine a suitable motion. And I now seek if there's a further motion on this matter. Councillor McConnell.
Yeah, I'd like to move a motion, please, Mr Mayor. Go back up to the original recommendation. If you cut the original recommendation and change the requests to approve. Just wait for that to come through. And the motion will be that Council approve the request from Councillor Jeffrey McConnell and Councillor Derek Swanborough to attend the Peak Services 2-hour emotional wellness workshop, Dropping Anchor, on Sunday, 16 October 2022 in Cairns at a cost of, per person, of 1, Dropping Anchor course $530, and 2, accommodation and incidental expenses $379.
Moved by Councillor McConnell. Any questions to Councillor McConnell? Additional discussion? Councillors? I would just observe, councillors, that I think what the prior discussion shows is there's really always got to be a concern about how we're treating the best value opportunities. And when this training was originally planned as media training, there was a very late change for it to slot this in to the agenda in its place, which didn't necessarily get visibility right across the board because people had already locked in other schedules. So I think it's a timely reminder to be prudent and efficient in this pattern and priorities of attendance. But the motion's before us. No other discussion. We seek a seconder. Councillor McInnes. Councillor McConnell, speak to your motion.
Yes, I will speak to the motion, Mr Mayor. I think this is ratepayers' money being well spent, because not only do we attend a course, but we also get to network with other councillors that afternoon as well as that night and the following morning. Whenever I attend one of the courses or any of the conferences, that's something that we do regularly. If at the LGAQ Leaders Summit in Twin Waters, we met up with 30 or 40 different councils to find out how they operate. And I think networking is an important part of attending any course. And considering that the only additional cost of attending this course is around about $180, I don't think any resident out there will be too concerned. Thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against? Councillor West.
Thank you, Mayor. And look, there's no doubt, as Councillor McConnell has said, that networking is very important, and we will have a few days of being able to do that, to do the networking with other councillors. But for me, at the end of the day, it is about the extra cost on top of the course fees, which is the accommodation, which I have a problem with, which the ratepayers will have to pick up.
And you, anyone else wishing to speak for the motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'll speak here for the motion, and I'll also lend some words from Councillor McGuinness on previous issues that I think we've reached a new low. I think we should all be ashamed of ourselves for the embarrassment of spending so much time and effort discussing a couple of $100 when there can be no discussion sometimes when we go $1 million overrun on a job. And, you know,
Point of order, Mayor. I think that's very inappropriate comment.
Thank you, Councillor. I think, yes, Councillor, I would agree that's not upholding the character of council. There's been open and transparent debate. There's been, at no time has there been an attack on the character of any individual. There's been a discussion based on fact. There's been a discussion based on opportunities. And there's been fair consideration for the most part right throughout the conversation. So to suggest that because other councillors express a view about the priority of expense is somehow rather a low point for council.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. You're philosophising on something which is not in my mind.
Sorry, Councillor, point of order.
I've done a point of order first, Mayor, which I need to be able to speak to it before you speak.
Sorry, Councillor, you're incorrect. I was speaking to an original point of order and you interrupted me. So I wasn't philosophising. You specifically said that we'd reached the low point because of the discussion and the focus around the expenses. Councillors are entitled to express that point of view, which they have done fairly and openly.
I haven't argued, Mr. Mayor. I haven't said anything about their entitlement. All I have said is the amount of time we have spent on a couple of $100 around this table going backwards and forwards is an embarrassment. And I stick to my view about that, and I think anybody in the public gallery or the media or anybody listening to this debate today would shake their head in disbelief about what's happened.
Anyone else wishing to speak against?
Thank you, Mayor. I
Councillor
certainly would like to speak against, certainly for those points that were raised. Councillors, we went through a very laborious budget process to achieve an appropriate outcome. A part of that budget process was that we allocated $1,000 a year for each councillor. That is a responsible way to deal with it. We're a little bit over 2 months into this financial year. Already Councillor McConnell, if this motion goes through, will be double the allocation. Councillor Swanborough will be almost up to the allocation. To me, it's about being conscious of costs, and that's something that I consider an appropriate responsibility for my role. I'm not sure what you do. And it's
caution, Councillor.
And looking at alternative ways to provide a suitable outcome is really my only motivation.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for the motion? Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we'll put the motion. Sorry, you wish to close? Sorry, yes, Councillor, do you wish to close?
I will speak because I agree with Councillor Swanborough. We've just spent nearly an hour debating $300 to attend an additional $300 to attend a conference, which is of great benefit. And obviously, I have exceeded my allocation because I've taken on the additional role of Deputy Mayor, and I take that position seriously. And considering how this council has acted over the last 2 years, that's why I attended the protocols for council meetings, chairing council meetings, another one in September for de-escalating aggressive behaviour, attending the wellness, attending the media, and I'm sure if anyone out in the community feels that I'm doing the wrong thing, I'm happy for them to email me or to come and see me and say that, no, I shouldn't be attending any courses to better improve how I conduct my business as a councillor. So I will speak in favour, and it's, as Councillor Swanborough said, it's a pretty low point where we're discussing for an hour $300. Thank you.
Put the motion. Those in favour? Those, those against? The motion's carried.
Division, please, Mr Mayor.
Division called. Those in favour, divisions 1 and 2, 5 and 6. Those against, Mayor, division 3 and 4.
Sorry, just to close off, Mr Mayor,
sorry.
I did foreshadow a motion at
Yeah,
the end to you.
sorry,
I will now take that out. That was, if this didn't pass, I was more than prepared to pay that $379 myself to attend that course, but that's no longer needed.
Okay, councillors, we move forward to, we will actually, yes, at 10:55 we will pause for 15 minutes. We'll adjourn for 15 minutes and be back at 11:10, please, to continue today's deliberations. We're adjourned. Thank you. Welcome back, councillors, executive, and those joining us in the digital gallery today. We move to item 10.2 of our agenda, and I turn to the acting CEO to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 10.2 discusses. Sorry, thank you, Mayor. Item 10.2 discusses the end-of-year close down for council's facilities, offices, libraries, and the cultural centres over the Christmas and New Year period. So, noting that there is a slight variation across our facilities. Council offices, it is proposed that council offices will close at 3 p.m. on Friday the 23rd of December and reopen on Tuesday the 3rd of January 2023. For council's libraries and community and cultural centres, closing at 3 p.m. on the same Friday, the 23rd of December, up until Monday the 9th of January. Also noting that council's field-based employees will be taking the 2 weeks from the 26th of December up until and including Friday the 6th of January. I'd also like to note that a skeleton structure will remain on duty at Canungra, Beaudesert and Boona depots, and that park and roadside maintenance, mowing and slashing will continue throughout the Christmas period as scheduled and appropriate.
Okay, questions to the report, councillors? Any points for clarification?
Yes,
Councillor
Mayor,
Enright?
just one minor one I note. With the library and community and cultural staff, will be returning on Tuesday the 3rd of January, but not opening until Monday the 9th. Will they be carrying out some housekeeping maintenance type duties in that time?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Enright. Yes, those employees, it's a great opportunity each year for those employees to participate in training and development and also to undertake duties in back of house library.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other clarifications, councillors? If not, I think CEO, I'll get you to introduce the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Recommendation for item 10.2 is that council note the end-of-year close down for 2022-2023 as follows. For council offices, from 3 p.m. on Friday the 23rd of December 2022, up to and including Monday the 2nd of January 2023, with council reopening on Tuesday the 3rd of January 2023. For council's libraries and community and cultural centres, from 3 p.m. on Friday the 23rd of December 2022, up to and including Sunday the 8th of January 2023, with council reopening on Monday the 9th of January 2023, with employees returning to work on Tuesday the 3rd of January 2023. And 2, the council note annual close down for field-based operational employees will be from Monday the 26th of December 2022 up to and including Friday the 6th of January 2023, with a return to work scheduled for Monday 9th of January 2023.
Seeker mover, councillors. Councillor McInnes. Any further questions? Any additional discussion, councillors? Seeker seconder, Councillor West. Councillor McGuinness, you wish to speak?
No,
right. Thank you. Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? We put the motion. Those in favour? Councillor Chalk. Councillor Chalk, do we have you? You might be muted on your end. Councillor Chalk, you've unmuted. Can we?
In favour?
Thank you. Thank you, councillor. Okay, then that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Move to item 10.3 on page 9 of today's agenda. Sorry, on page 12 of today's agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 10.3 relates to the Australian Top Tourism Awards in Canberra. Tamborine Mountain recently won the Top Tourism Town Award for Queensland, and as such, Councillors Christensen and Swanborough have been invited to attend the 2022 Australia Top Tourism Awards, which is being announced at a breakfast event hosted by the Australian Tourism Council at Parliament House in Canberra on Tuesday, 13th of September. There will also be a networking event on the evening prior to that. So the recommendation is that Council should support Councillor Swanborough attending the event, and in the event that he can't attend, that Mayor Christensen attend in his stead. The cost of the attendance is $953.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor McConnell?
Yeah, just a quick one to the manager, if I could, just to confirm that Division 2 also sits on Tamborine Mountain? And it's not just Division 1?
We are aware of that.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify for those residents in Division 2 that they are actually on the mountain.
With the big council with the biggest percentage.
Sorry, any further clarifications? Councillor McGuinness, do you have your...
No.
No, sorry. Thank you. Perhaps, councillors, just by way of clarification, I was, whilst I was invited, I was happy to step back just to balance the attendance for this occasion and allow Councillor Swanborough to attend on behalf of council. So if that doesn't hold sway, we'll work something else out as per the indication in the report. So yes, it's coming up fast. So if there's no further questions, introduce, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I should also say that Judy Minikin, representing the Tamborine Mountain Chamber, will also be attending the event. So the recommendation for Council is that Council endorse Councillor Derek Swanborough as the nominated Council representative to attend the 2022 Australia Top Tourism Awards ceremony hosted by the Australian Tourism Industry Council to be held in Canberra on Tuesday, 13th of September 2022, at which Tamborine Mountain is a finalist. And should Councillor Swanborough be unavailable, that Mayor Christensen attend in his place. And 2, Council note that the estimated cost of $953 for the nominated delegates' attendance at the event, including travel.
Seeker mover, Councillor McConnell. Any additional questions? Any additional discussion? Seeker seconder, Councillor West. Wish to speak to the motion, Councillor McConnell?
Yeah, only that I look forward to Tamborine Mountain winning that award, and Councillor Swanborough texting us on the night to let us know how it went. Thank you.
In the morning.
It's a
breakfast.
It's a breakfast.
Okay, will you be up in
I don't text before lunch.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I think that Tamborine Mountain being nominated as top tourism town in Queensland for a population over 5,000 is very appropriate. It's not only a top tourism town in Queensland, but I believe it's a top town in every other aspect also. And I am biased. But it'll be a pleasure to attend with a pleasure to attend with Judy Minikin from the Chamber of Commerce to represent Council with this award.
Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? Councillor McConnell, wish to close?
Oh, good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Those in favour? Councillor Chalk?
In favour.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, we move to item 10.4, GMS Environment Sustainability. Introduce this item on page 16 of the agenda, councillors.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, executive, staff and those listening in online. Item 10.4 deals with the finalisation of the Infrastructure Capital Works program delivery for 21-22 financial year. I will draw your attention to a number of factors contained within the report, and one of them being that the figures or the financial numbers actually indicated there as carried forwards are only indicative and should be treated as such. A further report from a financial position will be provided at a later date to actually confirm those numbers, and I can confirm some of those have been adjusted or changed as a result of deliberations when looking at the carry forwards. Other aspects also from a budgetary point of view is there are a number of some of our larger projects that have sustained additional impacts as a result of the wet weather during May, as well as ongoing resourcing challenges, as well as challenges with regard to significant price rises with some aspects of materials that are to be provided with regard to the works that we have put together for last financial year. Unfortunately, I sound like a broken record, but I will actually say that this, and I have said this before and I'll say it again publicly, in my almost 30 years of working in local government and delivery of capital projects, the last 12 months and what have been some of the most trying or have been, without a doubt, the most trying circumstances that I've been put in or have had teams put in to actually deliver capital works on all those fronts that I've previously mentioned. So, look, I'm happy to take questions on specific projects. There is some highlighting within the report itself around some standout issues with some projects. I will say there are a number of smaller projects that were delivered, and certainly I'm very proud of the team that we have that has stood up to the challenge and delivered where we can, given the trying circumstances that we've had. Look, happy, as I said, to take any questions.
Clarifications, Councillor Swanborough.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wonder if the General Manager could advise on the status of the Tambourine Mountain Library. I'm fielding a lot of questions about that, and I think it'd be good for the community to understand where we're at with that project.
Yeah, okay. So this report really deals with as at of June, but I can provide an update to this point in time. We have looked at, or have to look at, our delivery model with that particular project. We are looking at, so the design is somewhat completed. Certainly materials and that are involved in the delivery of that project certainly looked as part of the architect to actually for materials that are available and produced in Australia or available in Australia. At the same time, we are looking at delivering a portion of that contract, of that delivery within our own management techniques rather than actually going as a whole contract out to the open market. So we're still working through what that means. We are still in negotiations with the funding body around the timing of that particular project. At this point in time, we're still coming to terms with the exact when that particular project will start, but it will be in the coming weeks to months. Well, within 3 to 6 weeks, I would believe there'll be some activity on site as a start. At this stage, we're trying our hardest, or the team are trying our hardest to have the majority of works completed, if not towards the end of this year, but early in the next calendar year.
Thank you. Councillor West.
Thank you, Mayor. To the General Manager, in the report you mention that Spring Creek, Duck Creek Bridge and Flying Fox will be completed in the new financial year. Can you just give us an update? Because I believe they've progressed rather well, have they not, with the recent dry weather we've had since the beginning of the financial year? Yes,
I might actually hand to my colleague, Acting Manager of Capital Works and Asset Management, Wasu Kadeshi, to provide a response to that question.
Yep, I am happy to provide the response. So the Duck Creek Bridge and Flying Fox both are almost complete. The second coat seal will be completed in September, October when the weather warms up, and both the bridges are almost complete, I will say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McConnell?
Yeah, to the GM, if I could, I've got some concerns with some of the percentages completion. Facilities maintenance, obviously asset management is key to maintaining facilities in the appropriate state, but we're only at 56%.
Yeah, so the actual title of the area is facilities maintenance, but it also involves capital projects. Yes, it's probably not the best sectional name for that particular heading. Within that particular listing, if you were to go a couple of pages in, facilities maintenance, you can see there are some big ticket items in there, including Bromwellton Transfer Station, community and cultural services, air conditioning upgrades, as well as the Desert Enterprise precinct pavement repairs. So in amongst that also are some car park upgrades to a couple of our parks. So some of those have started or design has started, and some of those projects are multi-year projects as well, with funding tied over 2.5 years. So yes, I do agree, and from an operational point of view, the majority of the maintenance costs were on track, or if not slightly over, as a result of the way the year panned out.
Okay, parks and landscape maintenance down to 27%.
Yeah, so parks and landscape maintenance, similar story. Within that, there are a number of projects that are capital related. The title is the section title, which relates to maintenance, but there are a number of minor to medium-sized capital projects within that area, which are listed within the attachment. Some of those are, well, looking at some of the bigger items, would be Collins Park Garden Landscape, which was approximately 50% complete. We have another couple of items there. I think there was also, there is a number of items there that were either started or not quite completed. But I will add that as a result of the fine weather, a number of these have had, similar to the bridges, some relatively good progress in the last 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, if you go down to vibrant and active towns and villages, 39%.
Councillor,
Sorry?
just to help, page number? Are you working through the detail
Page
pages?
24.
Thank you. Just for those listening. In
Line number, what's that, 132. You can see we're only at 39% of our active towns and villages.
Yes, it's the project itself is a multi-year project. We had planned to start the particular aspects. We've got 5 stages identified within the Bay Desert Town Centre Revitalisation Project. Stages 1 and 2 are well underway at the moment, and had been impacted quite considerably. One, initially via a design change, and unfortunately, I think it may even be on a recording here, I did say that delay enabled us not to be there during the February rain event, and that hopefully we'll be clear sailing into the final quarter of the year, and then May flood event come along as well. So that certainly not only impacted the ability to do work on site, it also created quite a interesting situation once the contractor started digging the drainage in place. So the reality of that is there's 2 parts to it. One is it's a multi-year project, but secondly, that we had planned to be 3 months further advanced than what we were, but given the impacts through weather and other issues relating to that project.
So, just before you move on, Councillor, that line item that you're referring to at the summary heading, Vibrant Active Towns and Villages, perhaps, GM, it is just helpful to remind people about what's in those columns, particularly the start and finish. Could you just clarify, because that talks to the time frame you're referring to, I believe.
Yes, so if we actually go to page, I think it's 24, you'll see the details of each of the projects that are underneath the Vibrant Active Towns and Villages. So within that you can see that there are a number of separated project titles more out of the need with regard to the funding streams that have funded those, which generally are being delivered through a 5-stage project with regard to at least the top 10 or so projects within that. So, yeah, there are some other minor projects like the Boona Town Centre precinct development, which there were some minor works that were continued to be worked on there, as well as Tiny Tots Playground, which was substantially or finalised, as well as Tambourine Memorial Park, which unfortunately it looks like that was just a carryover from last year. So, so look, I will, as said previously, the majority of the work is tied up with the Desert Town Centre revitalisation project.
Sorry, GM, just before we go on, just for clarity, that 39% figure that was quoted on line 132 is in reference to the scope from the 1st of 7th 21 through to the 12th of the 2nd 24.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
So it's not necessarily within the annual context. Thank you.
No, but there's a lot of projects in there that are due, have already passed or are due, so I was just bringing those up. So if I could just move on, how does this, considering, just let me go back up to the top, considering totally we're only at 57% of total capital expenditure and quite a number of projects behind, how does that impact this year's capital works? Considering the number of tasks or number of items in there, and considering last year at the same time we had 129 projects in the 2021, and we only completed 58 with 71 still outstanding that you've completed this year. So is 2021 capital works program completed?
No, not entirely. There are still a number of projects that, for various reasons, resourcing, as I mentioned earlier, material supply, and certainly the weather impacts is certainly delayed either the start or the completion of a number of projects. Unfortunately, as you asked, and I believe your question there was also around the capability to deliver this financial year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the weather is not going to be kind to us again. We certainly have put in place looking at alternative options in delivery, making sure that those material supplied products that are hard to get are actually ordered well in advance, or at least we understand when it comes to the timing of the project that we actually understand what materials may not be available. So yes, look, there will be certainly projects that are on this year's capital works program that may not be delivered as a result of all of the information I've just provided. But certainly the team are working through how to actually achieve as much of that program as we can. Not without stating also that we have a fairly large flood delivery program that we need to work through, and we're certainly working with the QRA around the timing of that. Also understanding, given the weather that we potentially will have in the next 3 to 6 months and even beyond, and how that may impact on how we can deliver our flood program as well within our capital program. So yes, certainly Wasu and others that are certainly working through how we can best achieve an outcome to deliver for the community on this program.
Thank you.
Councillor Swanborough.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. While we're on the same page of Vibrant Towns and Community, there's a line item there called Tambourine Mountain Infrastructure. That's a very general term. I wonder if that could be expanded a little bit to, say what is the infrastructure, what is the allocation for, in order that the readers can have a little bit more understanding of what's proposed to be delivered.
So there was a nominal figure put forward in a number of budgets ago for an allocation to purchase land for a car park facility at Gallery Walk. The reality of it is that the naming within the report was an indicative name that was provided at the time, because we did not believe it was appropriate to specify exactly that it was for the purchase of land. It was certainly seed money towards understanding what that needed to look like.
So is there any reason why we can't specify that now?
No, there's no reason. So the reality is that we've actually utilised portion of that, or some of these funds towards the purchase of land at Gallery Walk.
And could I ask what the cost of the land was, and has it been settled yet?
The land purchase has been settled, and the cost of the land was approximately $6 million. To have the exact figure, there will be a future report brought to council outlining the exact cost and also the mechanisms behind the purchase and the future plans for that site.
Further questions, councillors? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. Question to the GM on page 22, if I may. At the bottom of the page there, it's car parks and access driveway upgrades, and I note that Selwyn Park and Coronation Park are listed. I was just interested in how that's progressing, noting that the challenges of weather and this report is June, but just a...
Yeah, so the actual projects themselves are progressing quite well as far as we've detailed design has occurred. And at the moment, look, if Scott Osmond, our manager of operations and maintenance, was here, he'd be able to provide exactly. But the last briefing that I received was that we were going to go to the users of those facilities and work through what was the proposed design and see if there is any requirements for any enhancements on those. We certainly looked that we can certainly achieve our desired outcome within the budget that is allocated there as well. So that is, and now we're looking towards the mechanism to actually deliver those projects.
Right. Thank you. That's excellent. Page 24. And my question relates to the Vibrant and Active Towns and Villages category, and particular interest with the Bedesert Business Park and the Bedesert Town Centre revitalisation. Given the cost increases with weather and price increases, have these increases been captured in this document at this stage?
As at the end of June, those figures were correct. However, I might have to seek further advice from others around whether those figures, as far as need to be updated. I believe the town centre revitalisation, Bedesert Town Centre revitalisation figures are not up to date with regard to the various stages, and the teams are working through what either a decreased scope in what we're looking at delivering, or what the plan would be if we continue with the scope and how we can work through what our final costs may be. That's for Bedesert Town Centre revitalisation. The Bedesert Business Park development, I'm not sure, Basu, whether you have any additional information you could provide today?
Yeah, with the Bedesert Business Park development, obviously because of rain, resource delay, with those, there is cost increase, and we will update the exact number in the upcoming meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Further question, councillor?
One more on page 26. The Hinchcliffe Bridge replacement. Just wondering how that's progressing. I note that by the dollar value, this is really more about preparation rather than the function of the replacement.
So with Hinchcliffe Bridge, we've got to the point where final design has been sorted. Negotiations around the utility services that have been worked through. There are a couple other minor issues that are currently being dealt with, and we'll soon be able to go out to tender for delivery of that particular structure.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, just
Councillor
another one
McConnell.
if I can. Page 24, line 117. The Sport and Rec Capital Works funding pool of $201,500. Never got spent this year.
That's correct, and the main reason for that is around the sporting infrastructure review is still being finalised, but it certainly would be proposed that that be carried forward and be utilised to deliver some of the high priorities out of that infrastructure review.
Can I ask when that review was started?
Yes, it was started, I would say, approximately 2.5 years ago.
Can I ask what the delay to getting a report is?
I can give you the short version.
Yeah,
We
sure.
had some impacts with regard to being able to meet with the various sporting groups with regards to COVID impacts. That delayed portion of it. I think, to be honest, I believe there's been an amount of scope creep within what was the first original intent of the actual project, was to basically understand the relevance or the amount of infrastructure within our sporting precincts, and then understand where the deficiencies were and what maintenance or upgrade was required. It's morphed into more now also understanding the operation and maintenance activities within some of those sporting precincts, and where councils potential may wish to or otherwise take on varying responsibilities within that aspect as well. So that has added some time to actually then getting a finalisation on that infrastructure review.
So that additional scope creep was the cause of councillors?
Partially, but at the same time, officers were prepared to explore those opportunities whilst we had engaged with the sporting groups.
Do we have a time frame when that will be completed? Considering that
It has been
COVID hasn't been a real factor for close to 8-9 months now?
Yes, so we do have a draft report that is currently being reviewed through the executive team and will be provided as a report in coming months to council.
Coming months being?
Prior to Christmas. Without the Manager of Maintenance and Operations here today, I'm reluctant to put a direct date, but I know that my latest update for him was that he was hoping to have something put together in October, but understanding that whether the document had presented to council needs more work or otherwise, that's why I've added another 2 months to that outcome.
So the $201,000 that's allocated can't be used at the moment until that's completed. So even if we identify that there's projects out there that need to be done, we're not spending the money until that report's done?
I would suggest that would be the most appropriate way forward, that we actually have the prioritised list of the needs. It's not only, may not fund just new infrastructure, it may also support the refurbishment of existing infrastructure. So I would think that it would be appropriate to wait until that has run its course or been partially finalised.
My concern is that we've been waiting 2.5 years and not spending anything on sporting. Would that be correct?
I don't believe we've not been spending anything. This is somewhat
substantial. Then anything substantial.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with that. I will suggest that the budget this year for this year has actually identified sports lighting as a key enabler for the sporting fields that we do have within the region. Main centres being Boona, Mount Desert, and the Tambourine Mountain. Yeah, so the reality of this is that we certainly will work through those priorities, and we're certainly understanding that given there is demand on lighting towers as well, so it may be that some of those dollars may be required to supplement that program also.
So the $201,000, is that a recurring cost every year, or was that a one-off that's just been rolled over?
So year on year, there was if you look within the 10-year program, there was $100,000 which has been incremented to grow. But it wasn't actually every year, it was placed in there for every second year. However, there would be some understanding that as a result of the sporting infrastructure review, that there may be a need to revisit that figure. But from a long-term financial funding point of view, that was the allocation that was put in the long-term financial forecast.
Thank you.
Just a supplementary question. I note the comment there about COVID. Has COVID continued to impact on the availability of our workforce over this year and had impacts on our staffing and capacity as well as the weather events, etc.?
Yes, it has. It certainly has, and not only for our own staffing but also with contractors. Yes, certainly something that was an additional challenge within our delivery.
Thank you. Okay. No further questions. We go back to the recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. The recommendation is that Council note the update on the delivery of the 21-22 Infrastructure Capital Works Program.
Seeker mover, Councillor Enright. Further questions? Any further discussion? Seeker seconder. Councillor Swanborough. Councillor Enright, first to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to commend the General Manager and his managers and all of the staff for providing this update, but also for showing their flexibility in their ability to deliver under very challenging circumstances. I think, as the General Manager outlined in his 30-year career, to be working on delivering projects under such challenging conditions is certainly a big task. However, I admire the ability to take opportunities for flexibility and working their way around it under the conditions that they have been able to do. So well done to the team. Keep up the great work, and we look forward to this being many of these projects being delivered in the coming year.
Thank you. Councillor, anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we'll put the motion. Those in favour? Councillor Chalk.
He was having difficulty hearing, Mr. Mayor, but he's indicating he was dropping out.
Okay. Can we hear you? Can you hear us, Councillor Chalk, at the moment? Councillor Chalk. Can you see if you can get him on the mobile? Councillor Chalk, can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you now, yeah.
Yep. The motion to note the update, to support the recommendation that we note the update on the delivery of the 21-22 Infrastructure Capital Works Program. How do you vote? For or against?
I vote for the motion.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. Councillor, is your signal dropping out at the moment? Councillor Chalk, are you dropping out in the online?
Yeah, the Skype just dropped out audio when Chris was speaking. So at the moment I'm on the phone, on speakerphone. I might have to retry to connect through Skype.
Right. We might take a 3-minute pause. Should we just pause? We won't adjourn. We're just pausing, councillors, while we do that. Chock, do we have you back?
Yeah, I'm back there.
Okay, let's see how that goes. Let's press on now then. Five.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Item 10.5 is in relation to waste asset development operations and service expression of interest. Basically, Council certainly at a previous ordinary meeting actually adopted the Waste Management and Resource Recovery Strategy 2021-2026. What we're asking Council here is to actually go out to the open market and understand the opportunities that exist with regards to all things waste. We're not in a position to actually specify things that would be out of scope within this particular expression of interest. It's around understanding what is out in the market that could assist us in delivery of not only our waste but other waste streams that we may be able to assist in being able to support. With that as a very brief summary, I will hand over to Kartik Venkataraman, our Manager of Resources and Sustainability, to provide further information.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, councillors, executive team, and members in the digital gallery. So this is the paper on the expression of interest for the waste asset development for operations and services. So as part of the waste management and resource recovery strategy, this has been identified as one of the tools process to identify and enhance our resource recovery, but at the same time shift to a circular economy in terms of the waste management and resource recovery. So this basically will enable us to identify what the market has to offer in terms of technology, products, services in manufacturing and reprocessing. So what we can do in terms of waste and resources within Scenic Rim, enhance the resource recovery and the processing and the remanufacturing side of things. At the same time, look at job creations and the circular economy, the whole approach. The process itself is going to be just understanding and investigating and researching the market and doing the analysis. It's not going to be tying council with any service providers or groups in terms of the services. It's just identifying and giving us an informed information to make the decision moving forward. In terms of the timelines, we are looking at least 12 to 18 months before we can actually determine what the market has to offer and then go out to the market in terms of whether we want to go outside and seek those technologies and the processes and the systems, and that will be through a tendered process under the council policy. As far as the process so far, we have been consulting and liaising with the various departments within council. We have also had information briefings with the relevant staff members to date, and we've received some good and positive feedback so far. So moving forward in terms of the process, we'll be looking at engaging an external consultant to go through the process and develop the process for the EOI, which will be sent out potentially early next year in terms of getting for the market testing. So without going further into the details, that's where we are at the moment in terms of the expression of interest process, and happy to take any more questions.
Councillors, any points for clarification to the report? GM, did you have something to add?
Sorry, Mayor, I just wanted to add that within the process that we're asking council, there is an actual process outlined within the Local Government Act around how we determine an expression of interest process, and the recommendations that are before you today have been confirmed by our legal support that they are appropriate in actually enabling council officers to go to an expression of interest stage on this particular item.
Points for clarification, councillors?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. What we're calling expressions of interest for is facilities operations. We've had a waste curbside collection contract that's only 2 years old. There's no intention, I take it, of interfering with that contract in this process. Or what happens if someone proposes that they want the waste stream from our curbside collection? What is the response to them?
Thank you, Councillor Swanborough. This expression of interest is particularly and predominantly focusing on the facilities and the services and not interfering with the waste collection services. The waste collection services is an entirely different contract. It's a 10-year contract, and it's something that will not be looked at as part of this process. It's more to do with the operations of the facilities, the services, and enhancing the resource recovery side of things in terms of the operations that we provide to the community.
Just a further point to clarify to that. If my recollection from when we approved the waste collection contract, it has its own structures within that contract to manage the compliance with the changing landscape from the state government as well as potentially from council in its pattern. Is that a correct recollection?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so that's a separate piece that has confidence. Any other questions to this, councillors? If not, we might move forward. Just certainly a few comments I'd like to add, but perhaps leave that until we get into the discussion. Perhaps we move to tabling the recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. The recommendation is that council determine that it is in the public interest to invite expressions of interest for waste facilities operations, resource recovery and advanced waste management technology and services in accordance with the Local Government Regulation 2012, Section 2283, and 2, council endorse an expression of interest process for waste facilities development, operations, resource recovery and advanced waste management technology and services in accordance with Local Government Regulations 2012, Section 2285.
I seek a mover. Councillor Enright, thank you. Now, further questions? Councillor McConnell?
Do you know what sort of new initiatives that you're looking for or that are out there? Have we?
Oh, look, to be honest, I don't want to stifle anybody's thought process by actually saying what we're looking for. Well, I guess the overall objective is to actually understand how we can better manage our waste stream and increase the resource recovery. So that we'll have set goals of what we're trying to achieve, but the reality of it is I'd rather not speculate or specify what particular aspects of that we'd be looking at more over another, if that makes sense.
Perhaps, Councillor, if I may, given my role as chair of the South East Queensland Waste Working Group, a reflection, the ideas and innovations around stopping talking about waste and talking about unrecognised resource is really accelerating because of the impetus from the state government. And even in the last 3 months through that process, I've had visibility to at least 4 new technology or concepts that people are wanting to bring to market. And those are everything from small-scale solutions that take more accountability at source for individual properties, through to the utilisation of the existing logistics of waste collection to consolidate materials to create a commercial mass for a particular type of solution that can have a high efficiency of recovering that resource into a value stream. So the landscape is really rapidly changing, and technologies that weren't even at concept stage 4 years ago are now at commercialisation stage. So it is a great time to be seeking that interest in the market. I hope that's why I think identifying particular streams, if you use the example of FOGO, which the state's called out as one of the priorities, there's about 36 different technologies that I can think of that convert that to quite significantly different, that convert that to a value-added resource through different mechanisms.
Thank you, hence my question to tee some of that out. So just in relation to page 28 in the third paragraph, it talks about cost effectiveness of our waste facility, and currently we're accepting 30,000 tonnes of waste per year, is that correct?
Approximately that.
Approximately that, but to be cost effective we need to double that?
That's correct at this stage.
So we accept waste from other sources outside the Scenic Rim?
We do
to be able to,
we do at this point, yes.
And would an EOI look at bringing more in to be able to meet that? Is that one of the...
It certainly could be an option, but certainly at this point in time there's no broad expansion thought of as part of this EOI process. But if it was proven that, say for example, a FOGO facility could be sited at a Brommelton landfill site, and to actually be efficient, we could collect similar materials from other locations. We certainly wouldn't exclude that and look at whether there are opportunities to partner with other councils to make that happen, or organisations to make that happen.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just wanted to add that the EOI process is not just focusing on the larger industry. It'll be open to community groups, small and medium scale industries, whether they are in the recycling sector or in the manufacturing reprocessing. So it's a great opportunity for every organisation, big or small, to get their interest and put the expression of interest.
Thank you. Councillor West, you had a question?
Thank you, Kartik. On page 29, it's mentioned about the community information has already been prepared. I'm just wondering when we may get to see that information and then engagement to follow, please.
Yes, I think that will be circulated before it's been sent out.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Any discussion, councillors? I'd certainly just add in the discussion, it's worth remembering, councillors, that the state have taken a proactive step of advancing the payments of the rebate against domestic waste levies for the next few years as an upfront payment, albeit it has had a reduction factor applied to it on the basis that we are achieving reductions in waste to landfill over that time. So the timing of this is really important to ensure that we're not just keeping pace but staying ahead of the curve at a time which is quite dynamic. There's clearly an appetite generally across our community for such a program. There are opportunities right across the stream, but it's worth remembering there is a commercial imperative as well as an environmental and social imperative that rests in this space that we really need to maintain focus on. Just Councillor McConnell?
Yeah, just for those in digital gallery, councillors went out and had a look at the Brommelton waste facility, and it definitely helps getting out and seeing it on the ground and how it works, and thank the officers out there for their explanations and the tour, because once this comes up it gives you a new perspective of what we're looking at and how it all works. So I'd like to thank you getting that tool before we get this report. So thank you.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, and I seek a seconder. Councillor McConnell. Sorry, we had put the motion, I thought we put the recommendation before. Did we not put the recommendation? Yes. And I thought, oh yeah, we had a, sorry, I had a mover. Councillor Enright, that's why I was just a bit confused by the screen for a second. Thank you. Thought I had a mover. You wish to speak, Councillor Enright?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe this is an appropriate way forward for Council to investigate the opportunities for what the future may look like. It's only one step in a fairly long journey. I think we all realise that the waste industry is a very much a changing landscape, and for us to understand what opportunities out there that might be available would be best led by the market. It's important to know that this doesn't lock Council into any outcomes, just providing information for a future decision. So we look forward to this being a beneficial outcome for our Council.
Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? Councillor McConnell?
Yeah, I'll just support Councillor Enright's comments there. People need to understand it's only an expression of interest. We're not going out to the market to implement something new. We're just going out to see what's out there so that we can be better informed and put it out there. So yeah, highly recommend this this motion.
Okay. No further requests to speak. Wish to close, Councillor Enright? We put the motion. Those in favour?
In favour.
That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We move to item 10.6, GM Council Sustainability.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, pleased to present the report today that highlights Council's financial position at, as of 31st July 2022. Given that this is the first month of the operation since adoption of the 2022-2023 budget, there's probably some opportunities here for some refresh on some important key matters around budget and whatnot. And one of those is, we've touched on it before about the delivery of works, is that, you know, when council begins each financial year with a budget, it includes the timings for the projects built in at that particular point in time in trying to forecast the year ahead, but in balancing also the needs of council's delivery against weather impacts and such, and other you know, dropping ins of grant fundings and everything else, the program, both capital and operating, may need to be altered, and we've seen that in over the time since. And more importantly, that's when, you know, obviously when we adopt a budget, there is some flexibility required when it comes to that, because at the point in time that council went considered and adopted this budget, you know, it's not to say that a lot of things have come up in between that time. So the month of July, I guess, as you would see in the as detailed in the report, there are some budget variations for some operational and capital programs, and this is because of the continuation of some projects that were originally budgeted for in 21-22 continuing, and those projects aren't necessarily reflected in the budget. And as Chris pointed out before, we're in the midst of progressing the first stage of the budget amendment, which is incorporating the 21-22 carry forward budgets into the current year budget. So once they've been considered and considered by council and adopted, then they'll be reflected into the relevant monthly reporting to give you a consolidated carry forward as well as the current budget standings. Again, I won't go into the executive summary, but the executive summary, for those listening and also those in the report, it does portray in a good sense the written aspects of how the month has evolved. But I thought, Mr. Mayor, I'd take the opportunity to provide some refreshers on some aspects of the report. In particular, when I look at page 3 of the attached report, or page 40 of the agenda, you can see a number of graph indicators. This is a really good opportunity just to get a quick snapshot of how council is tracking with the budget. You can see the first one at the top. that's the operating surplus. It's indicating there that the variance is 3.9%, or just about just under $1 million worth of favourable underspend. And the reasons are provided for councils in the various statements, as well as the executive summary, indicating that a third of it has to do with employee expenses, and one part of that is some of the back payments associated with the EB increases that's yet to be processed from last year, and some other aspects. But also there's $720,000 worth of materials and services, and that's detailed greatly on page 7 of 11 of the report, or page 44 of the agenda item. It was touched on before, but the second bottom of the graphs there is indicating the capital expenditure. At this part of the year, you can see that we're actually well ahead, but as indicated in the detailed summary and touched on before about the Vibrant Active Towns expenditure, you can see that there's an expenditure amount in this year of $6.086 million that's been affected, and that's to do with the property purchase that was touched on before. So the amount that Chris was referring to before, that was the amount as of 30th of June 2022, which was the deposit at the time paid for that land, with the balance being paid out of this year's budget. However, the capital expenditure was in last year. Further, in addition to the report, Mr. Mayor, is the bottom graph. Whilst that graph has existed in the past, I think if you turn to page 9 of 11 or page 46 of the agenda, what we try to put in there is to, our reports are based on an accrual accounting, not cash accounting methods, and there's always some particular attention paid to the cash at bank balance of council, and what we put in there to provide further clarity is some aspects. So if you turn to page 9 of 11 or 46 of the agenda, you can see that the very bottom, there's inclusions there of estimate of restricted cash. That just gives some indication of whilst there's some $45 million in cash and investments, $30.5 million is what's deemed as restricted. That includes loan drawdowns but not yet expended, which part of that $15 million. Operating grants received but not yet expended, so that's their funds for particular purposes that we just can't realise as retained earnings or cash. Capital grant received but not yet expended, as well as what was indicated before, the advance payment of 3 financial years for the levy, and also cash held in trust, which is bonds and other things like that. So we've got to be mindful that whilst it looks like we've got a lot of money in the bank, there is a restriction on that cash, and there's not that cash isn't just a sign of council. I turn to page 4 of the report, or page 41. Given that we've had the first half rates levy for the year, Mr. Mayor, it's probably good to just provide a snapshot of where that is. You can see in the statement of comprehensive income, the very top line there, which is rates and charges, there's a variation of just about 57,000, which represents about 0.018% from the rates modelling, and on the basis that the budgeted rates and utility charges includes a growth factor. You can see that we're tracking fairly well when it comes to that, and that's pleasing to note. You'll probably see what looks like an anomaly there in the second line, with discounts and remissions being behind the schedule, but that's just in line with the forecast, the historical outlay when people actually come to pay rates, noting that these rates were issued out in July, but the due date for the discount wasn't until 25th of August. So you'll see that being realised in the following month. The only other items that I'd probably note out, just in case they're called out as some anomalies, is in page 42 of the agenda item, or page 5 of 11. There are a couple of, you can see, unbudgeted liabilities, current liability of $9.721 million, and other non-current liability of 4.9. The 9.7 represents, as explained in the executive summary, there's about $6.6 million of grants received, as well as part of those three forward years of the waste levy payment, one of those years relating to 22-23 is in there, and the other 2 forward years are in the non-current, which is the 4.908 million. And also we've got the emergency services levy that we've raised as part of the first half rates levy that will naturally remit to the Queensland Government. That's all my update, Mr. Mayor. Happy to seek any clarity or any further queries.
Clarifications, councillors, questions for the GM? Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. Only one on page 47 and refers to the hardship applications. Just seeking clarification that the bottom half of that table, are they new applications for this financial year?
Yes, that is correct, Councillor Wright, and thanks for the question. The ones above were from the previous financial year, and any ones on that current are the ones received for the 22-23. So in July, as I read up from the top, people have downloaded 2 lots of financial applications. However, we've also received 2 applications and 4, so we've manually sent those out, but other people can download them themselves and then apply for that. So and I think from memory, they're your general. There's a set criteria that council adopts in terms of being able to qualify for those financial hardships, be it a particular personal circumstances that's not allow them to, loss of employment and stuff like that seeks consideration for a set period of time to be able to pay off those. The flood ones we've received and currently under review too, and they're really part of our metrics, or part of the criteria that council adopted was in line with those applicants also being approved through the other varying levels of government flood support, that they've met that criteria, and since we've also been able to afford them some easing of when their rates are due. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I did forget to add that part of the report you may query about the last update to council was May, and we missed out June. June, with the end of financial year processing, with June, as I mentioned before, about accruals, so there's a number of processes that were paid in July that actually refer to the June. So once they're all affected, we are in the midst of providing June at the same time as when we have the financial statements ready to provide to the auditors. So the June accounts are coming. It's just that they're still being finalised at that time.
Thank you for that clarification. Further questions, councillor? So thank you for that clarification. Then we might go to the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. The recommendation for today on this report is that council receive the unaudited financial statements for the period ended 31 July 2022 for the financial year 2022-2023.
Seek a mover. Councillor Enright again. Thank you. Further questions? Further discussion? Seek a seconder. Councillor McInnes. Councillor Enright, wish to speak?
Just to say thank you, Oliver, for providing this report. Obviously, the first month of the financial year is difficult to get any sort of trends, particularly when there's a fair bit going on, but always good to see that things are performing well against budget.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally? We put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That brings me to the end of the business of today's meeting. Thank you for your participation. Thank you to those in the digital gallery for joining us today. Thank you to the officers who've prepared and participated in the meeting. And at 12:20, I declare the meeting closed.